And welcome everybody to another edition of the GSMC Football Podcast brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. As always, I'm your host Kenneth Grunfelder, and it's great to have you guys here on this Monday, September 16th. We have a lot to cover on the show today. Before I get into that, just want to remind you guys, as always, to tip or donate and get your comments recognized, make sure to go to the $ icon in the chat. Any thoughts or comments that you may have throughout the show, you will put out a super chat, which I will acknowledge on the live broadcast, and it just makes the show more interactive, more lively between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. We appreciate you guys' viewership each and every day, so any contribution you can make to the show means the world to us as we put out content for you guys each and every day. And also the other way to help out the show is by going to the link at the bottom of the show segment on the ticker GSMCPodcast.net. So, let's get into what we are going to discuss today. So we're going to recap some games from week one. We'll kind of do what we did similar to last week, where I'm basically going to, take the time to cover pretty much all the games throughout the week because just so much happened once again in the NFL. So we're going to start off the show. We're going to recap yesterday's Bengals-Chiefs game. The Chiefs edging out the Bengals 26-25 at the buzzer. Harrison Butker kicking a game-winning field goal. So we'll get into that. We'll talk about the Cowboys-Saints game in the second part of the show. The Saints, are they legit? Because they really dominated against the Cowboys, 44-19. So we'll get into that. We'll talk about the 49ers dropping a game to the Vikings and just some concerns I have with them. I'll also talk about some concerns I have with the Cowboys as well. But some concerns I have with the Niners going forward. We'll get into Aaron Rodgers picking up his first win as the Jets starting quarterback. It was funny. We'll get into it, but it's technically not his first victory as the Jets starting quarterback because he did start the game against the Bills last year and got the win. So we'll get into that as well as the Jets win against the Titans 24-17, and then we will preview tonight's Monday Night Football game between the Philadelphia Eagles and the Atlanta Falcons. That will end off week 2 in the NFL. So let's get into the first topic, which is talking about the Chiefs-Bengals game. So this was the latest in the Burrow-Mahomes saga. Week 1 was, the latest chapter in the Lamar Jackson-Patrick Mahomes saga. But yeah, so we got to see the Chiefs and the Bengals play, and once again, comes down to the wire. Now, it wasn't a 3-point game, but it did come down to a game-winning field goal. And, how the Bengals played last week, just didn't sit right with me. And combined with the fact that they just don't play well early on in the season, that's why I kind of lead towards the Chiefs covering the spread. I mean, I did have the Chiefs winning, but I did have them covering the spread as well. And I think I did have the score as, I think it was by a touchdown. But anyways, yeah, that was not the case. This game was very competitive. The Bengals did look good in this game. Joe Burrow looked a lot better. So that's definitely encouraging for the Bengals going forward. And, they still got to get T. Higgins back. And once he comes back, that's going to be huge for this team. But yeah, the Bengals played a very competitive game, which did not surprise me, but I just did not like how they played last week. So, and again, it's early on in the season. So that's why I was like, yeah, I'm going to take the Chiefs and lay the points, even though it's a big number. And a lot of teams, covered big spreads yesterday. So right now I have 6 wins in my spread pool. So yeah, we're already back. And judging by how everything went yesterday, it doesn't surprise me if the Falcons cover tonight. But yeah, this game was back and forth a lot. Like I said, Joe Burrow played better. 23 of 36, 258 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, got sacked 3 times. Patrick Mahomes, second fewest passing yards in a game. He went 18 of 25 for 151 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions in this game. And he could have had, I believe he could have had a third one, but there was a penalty on the play. So the Bengals opened up the game. They went right down the field, 10 plays, 66 yards, over 4 minutes of time of possession down the field. They kicked a field goal. Evan McPherson from 22 yards out. There actually was a fumble on this drive, but the Bengals, it got fumbled out of bounds. So the Bengals, still had possession with that. But then the Chiefs answered with a touchdown drive, or not a touchdown drive, a field goal drive of their own. 16 plays, 69 yards, 8.5 minutes of time of possession down the field. Harrison Butker, 19-yard field goal to tie the game. So that made it 3-3. The Bengals punted on their next drive. First play of the next drive for the Chiefs was an interception. Mahomes was trying to hit Travis Kelce, and it was intercepted by Davis Gather. Bengals cashed in with the touchdown. Joe Burrow connected with Yoshivas from 4 yards out. And they were talking about him a lot. He had another touchdown later in the game. That was from a couple yards out. Andre Yoshivas, and we're going to be hearing about him because with T. Higgins still out, he's going to get more opportunities. I mean, didn't have a huge game, but did have a couple of touchdowns. So then the Chiefs, they answered with a touchdown drive of their own. Mahomes connected with Rashee Rice for 44 yards. So that tied the game. Bengals answered with a field goal on their next drive. Evan McPherson from 33 yards out to make it 13-10. The Chiefs then fumbled on their next drive. Carson Steele fumbled around the 42-yard line of Kansas City. And then the Bengals, they kicked a field goal to make it 16-10. So it was 16-10 at the half. Evan McPherson from 48 yards out. And then the Chiefs opened up the second half with a touchdown drive. Mahomes connected with the backup. I think it was the backup left tackle for a touchdown. So that made it 17-16. And then the Bengals answered with another touchdown. Yoshivas again from 3 yards out. This was on 4th and goal too. So that was a big play in the game. They cashed in, and McPherson missed the extra point, which turned out to be huge in this game. And then Mahomes threw another interception. Taylor Britt, I mean, this was an unbelievable interception. One-handed, I mean, this was an Odell Beckham Jr.-like catch. I mean, he snagged that out of the air with one hand. That was unbelievable. That was definitely a top play of the weekend. But then the Bengals, they ended up getting a touchdown. So Joe Burrow ended up so the Chiefs actually ended up getting a touchdown because Burrow lost the ball. Yeah, I'm going off of CBS, so it was confusing me a little bit with how it was presented here. But yeah, so Burrow fumbled it, and it was recovered by the Chiefs. They took it in for a touchdown. Now, it was reviewed to see if he was down or not. He wasn't. That ball started to come out. I thought he looked like he was down, but when you look closer, the ball's coming out as he's going to the ground. So that was a big play for the Chiefs. And then the Bengals, they answered on their next drive. They went down the field and got a field goal. Evan McPherson, another field goal from 53 yards out. The kickers in this game, two of the best kickers in the NFL between McPherson and Harrison Butker. Then both teams punted. The Chiefs on their final drive, it looked like the game was over. Because on 4th and 16, they picked up a first down, but then it got called back. And yeah, it was 4th and 16. Mahomes threw a deep pass to Rashee Rice, and there was a pass interference call. And it was the right call, but in that moment, and against the Chiefs, and you know how many people complain about the Chiefs getting their calls. I think it was the right call, but many people will disagree and be like, yeah, well, another game where the Chiefs got bailed out by the refs. But that's not always the case, though, because there were some times where last year, if you go back to the Kadarius Toney game, that didn't go well for the Chiefs. That didn't go in their favor. But that was the right call. It's just unfortunate that it was in that moment. So the Chiefs, they got a huge break on that, got into Butker's range, and he kicked a game-winning 51-yard field goal, and the Chiefs win 26-25. But also, late in that game, I forget which drive it was on. I think it was on... it was on the second-to-last drive for the Bengals. So Jamar Chase was tackled, and it was believed for him that it was a hip drop tackle. And the refs didn't call it. So, he's complaining to the refs. He ends up getting an unsportsmanlike conduct penalty. And he's still, he was going nuts over it, which I can understand. I mean, the NFL is trying to, crack down on that. And there were some plays over the weekend where they missed it. On the injury that got Joe Mixon hurt in the Sunday night game, the refs didn't call it. And it's really hard for the refs to try to crack down on that. It really is a tough play to crack down on. But Jamar Chase was going nuts, and Joe Burrow even got in between him and the ref, and Joe Burrow was pushing him back into the huddle. I mean, Chase was going crazy, and even he was still going crazy on the sidelines. Talking to Zach Taylor. But again, I can understand it. It's just, but now you're costing your team by doing that. Because, that set them back to a 15-yard penalty. And on top of that, you don't want to lose Chase and him getting thrown out of the game either, because you're already without T. Higgins. And, you got a bunch of young, unproven guys on your team. So, that was a you didn't want that to happen. Now, he ended up not getting thrown out, but still, I can understand why, he was really upset over it. But yeah, Joe Burrow was literally pushing him back into the huddle, and he was getting in his face. He's like, bro, you got to stop. So, yeah, that happened. And then Joe Burrow's reaction to the pass interference call at the end of the game. I mean, he was so mad. He slammed his helmet on the ground. I mean, you never see that from Joe Burrow. They really wanted to win this game, and it didn't happen. And this is like what happened in the AFC Championship game a couple years ago. Mahomes took off with the ball, and he ended up getting pushed out of bounds, or he got pushed while he was going out of bounds, and the refs ended up calling a flag on that, got them in Butker's range, and he kicked the game-winning field goal there. So it was similar to what happened in the AFC Championship game. And it's unfortunate because, again, the Bengals once again fall to 0-2 to start off a season. That's not what you want. I'm not worried about them. I know there's people saying, "Oh, Joe Burrow looks like he's done. He hasn't played good football in quite some time." I think that's a little nuts. All right, and the Bengals have started off 0-2 before. They're gonna figure it out, and they're not the only 0-2 team in their division. So they're gonna figure it out. They're gonna be fine. But one last thing though. So the Chiefs, they got the win. Mahomes did not look great. The turnovers the last 2 weeks have looked bad, but you know what? Despite that, the Chiefs have won. But the Chiefs do have a major injury, so their starting running back Isaiah Pacheco is going to be going on injured reserve. So he suffered a fractured fibula in the game. So that is that's huge because he got off to a good start this year, and now they're going to have to rely upon Carson Steele and Samaje Perine, and they're still waiting on Clyde Edwards-Helaire to come back. So, yeah, that's a big loss for the Chiefs. I mean, is that going to, really, hurt this offense? I mean, it definitely is going to be a factor, but I think they're going to be fine. They still got a ton of weapons on this team, and I think they'll be able to piece it together in the backfield. But losing Pacheco is big because, he got off to a good start, and he's been a pretty good running back for them. So, but yeah, the Chiefs, they go on to play the Falcons next Sunday night, and then the Bengals on Monday night, they will be playing the Washington Commanders. And believe me, we will get to that game between the Commanders and the Giants at some point this week. So, yeah, let me know what you guys think about this game. What were some of your takeaways from it? Another entertaining game, another classic between these two quarterbacks, even though, the stats don't indicate that. But this is another great game between these two teams. But, yeah, it just hurts that, that the penalty had to come in that moment. But I do believe it was the right call. So, yeah, we're going to take our first break of the show now. When we come back, we're going to talk about the Saints-Cowboys game. Some of my concerns I have for the Cowboys, as well as, talking about the Saints. Are they legit? I'm going to keep saying that. But, yeah, that's what we're going to get into when we come back from our first break. So, with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.